"Stop, woman!" Commander Derek Shaw's voice echoed across the Blackridge training ground like a whip crack. The 54-year-old woman in the gray jacket didn't stop. She didn't flinch. She didn't even turn around. 5 seconds later, Derek Shaw was on the ground, his arm twisted behind his back, his face pressed into the dirt, and a voice whispered in his ear, "I stopped being just a woman 22 years ago, but I never stopped being a soldier." This happened at Blackridge Security Solutions, Virginia, July 15, 2024. What followed would change everything. If you want to see how a 54-year-old grandmother destroyed the most arrogant commander in the company, subscribe to my channel and watch until the end. Comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Margaret Callahan had learned a long time ago that the most powerful weapon in any room was being the person nobody noticed. She was 54 years old. Her hair had turned silver at the temples, streaking through brown, that she no longer bothered to dye. Her face carried lines that told stories she would never share. Her hands, small and weathered, looked like they belonged to someone's grandmother, which technically they did. She had 2 grandchildren, Emma 7, Michael Jr. 4, named after her husband, the husband whose dog tags she still wore under her shirt, pressed against her heart like a promise she had kept for 6 years. Today, those hands were wrapped around a coffee cup in the lobby of Blackridge Security Solutions, one of the most elite private military contractors in the country. The kind of company that trained the soldiers who trained other soldiers. The kind of company where weakness was a death sentence and reputation was everything. Margaret looked like she had wandered in from a PTA meeting. That was exactly the point. "Excuse me, ma'am." She looked up. A young man in tactical gear was staring at her with barely concealed confusion. His name tag read Peterson. He couldn't have been more than 25. "Can I help you find something? The visitors area is down the hall." Margaret smiled. It was the smile she had perfected over 2 decades of operations. Warm, unthreatening, forgettable. "Actually, I'm here for orientation. New logistics analyst." Peterson blinked, looked her up and down, made no effort to hide his assessment. "Logistics, right." He pointed toward a set of double doors. "HR is through there. They'll get you sorted." "Thank you, young man." She walked past him, feeling his eyes on her back. She knew what he was thinking. The same thing everyone would think. What is this old woman doing here? Good. Let them think it. The double doors led to a long corridor lined with photographs. Men in combat gear, men receiving medals, men shaking hands with generals and politicians. Men, men, men. Margaret counted 3 women in the entire wall of photos, all of them in support roles, none of them in combat positions. She stopped in front of one photograph, a group shot from 2018, 12 operators in full tactical gear faces, hard eyes harder. In the center stood a man with movie star looks and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Commander Derek Shaw. Margaret studied his face for a long moment. She had studied it many times before, in classified files, in surveillance photos, in the nightmares that woke her at 3 a.m. Derek Shaw didn't know it yet, but he was the reason she was here. Not for logistics, not for a paycheck, for justice. Beautiful, isn't he? Margaret turned. A woman had appeared beside her. Young late 20s with dark hair pulled back tight and eyes that held a familiar kind of exhaustion. "I'm sorry," Margaret said. "Shaw." Everyone stares at that photo. The woman's voice carried an edge. The golden boy. Fastest promotion in company history. Political connections that would make a senator jealous. She paused. "I'm Elena Vasquez. You must be the new logistics hire." "Margaret Callahan. Call me Maggie." Elena shook her hand. Her grip was strong, but her fingers trembled slightly. Something was wrong with this woman. Something she was trying very hard to hide. "Word of advice, Maggie, stay invisible around here. The men don't like competition, and Shaw..." Elena's voice dropped. "Shaw especially doesn't like women who stand out." "I've been invisible my whole life, honey. I'm very good at it." Elena almost smiled. Almost. "Come on, I'll show you to HR. And Maggie." "Yes." "Welcome to Blackridge. Try not to let them break you." Yeah. The orientation was exactly what Margaret expected. Forms. Signatures. A security badge with a photo that made her look 10 years older than she felt. A handbook filled with policies that sounded professional but meant know your place. She was assigned to Building C, the logistics wing. Her desk was in a corner away from the windows, surrounded by filing cabinets and forgotten equipment. It was the kind of desk where people were sent to be forgotten. Perfect. She spent her first morning memorizing the building layout. Fire exits, security cameras, blind spots, the rhythm of guard rotations, the faces of everyone she passed. She filed away every detail in the mental catalog she had been building since she was 22 years old when a drill instructor at Bud's had screamed in her face that she would never, ever make it through SEAL training. She had made it. One of only 3 women in history to complete the program. Classified, of course. Her name appeared in no records. Her achievements existed in no databases. As far as the world knew, Margaret Callahan was a military widow who had spent her career in administrative positions. That was the official story. The real story was written in scars, in nightmares, in a kill count she would take to her grave. At 11:47 a.m., she heard the commotion. Voices, raised, angry, coming from the main training ground visible through the logistics wing windows. Margaret moved to the glass. A crowd had gathered. 50, maybe 60 people forming a loose circle around something happening in the center. She could see tactical gear, raised hands, the body language of conflict. She found Elena's face in the crowd. The young woman looked pale, scared. Margaret was out the door before she consciously decided to move. She pushed through the crowd using elbows and shoulders with the practiced efficiency of someone who had navigated hostile territories far more dangerous than a training facility. In the center of the circle, 2 people faced each other. Elena Vasquez, standing at attention, her face burning red, her hands clenched at her sides, and Derek Shaw. He was taller in person, broader, the kind of physical presence that filled a room and demanded attention. His tactical gear was pristine, his posture perfect, his expression twisted into something between amusement and contempt. "Say it again, Lieutenant," Shaw said. His voice carried across the crowd. "I want everyone to hear." Elena's jaw tightened. "Sir, I was simply suggesting that the tactical approach could be modified to account for—" "Modified?" Shaw laughed. It was not a kind sound. "You've been here, 18 months, and you're going to tell me how to run combat operations. I wasn't trying to. You know what your problem is, Vasquez." Shaw stepped closer, invaded her space, made her feel small. "You think because you graduated top of your class at some second-rate officer program you understand combat. You don't. You've never seen real action. You've never had to make the calls that separate soldiers from corpses." Elena said nothing. Her hands shook harder. "And you know what else?" Shaw's voice dropped, but somehow became louder, more intimate, more cruel. "You're never going to see real action, because you're not built for it. None of you are." He swept his arm toward the crowd, and Margaret realized he wasn't just talking to Elena. He was talking to every woman present. This is a combat organization, not a social experiment, not a diversity initiative. Combat. And combat is about strength, speed, aggression. Things that, and I'm sorry if this hurts anyone's feelings, things that women are simply not designed for. Silence. The crowd stood frozen. Some of the men were nodding. Some looked uncomfortable. None of them spoke up. Elena's eyes were wet now. She blinked rapidly, fighting. Shaw smiled, the smile of a man who had won. "Dismissed, Lieutenant. Go cool off. Maybe have a good cry. And next time you want to suggest modifications to my operations." He leaned in close enough to whisper. "Don't." He turned away, started walking toward the command building. The crowd began to disperse, conversations buzzing with the kind of excitement that comes from watching someone else's humiliation. Margaret didn't move. She watched Elena stand there alone, fighting the tears that wanted to fall. She watched the young woman's hands curl into fists. She watched something break behind those dark eyes, And then she watched Elena see her. Recognition, surprise, and something else. Something that looked like shame. "Don't," Elena said quietly, approaching Margaret. "Don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you feel sorry for me." Margaret shook her head slowly. "I don't feel sorry for you, Elena. I feel angry for you. There's a difference." Elena laughed bitterly. "Angry doesn't change anything. This is how it is here, how it's always been. Shaw runs this place and Shaw believes what he believes. The best we can do is keep our heads down and survive." "Is that what you want to survive?" "What I want doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters." Elena stared at her. Something flickered in her expression. Confusion, interest. "Who are you?" she asked. "Really?" Margaret smiled that forgettable smile. "Just a logistics analyst, honey. Nothing more." That night, Margaret sat alone in her temporary quarters reading files by the light of a single lamp. The files were not supposed to exist. They were classified above her official clearance level. But Margaret had long ago learned that clearance levels were suggestions for people who followed rules. She had never been good at following rules. The files told a story, a complicated story that stretched back 7 years, involving shell companies' offshore accounts and weapons shipments that disappeared from official inventories only to reappear in places they should never have been. Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan. The weapons were advanced, American-made, top of the line. The buyers were enemies, terrorists. The same people who had ambushed her husband's unit in a valley that wasn't supposed to exist during a mission that never happened, using weapons that should have been impossible to obtain. Michael had died in her arms that day. He had looked at her with eyes that were already fading, and he had said the same thing he said every time they went out together. "I'll see you on the other side, Mags." She had said it back. "I'll see you on the other side." Then he was gone. 6 years later, she had traced the weapons to their source. A network of corrupt military officials and private contractors who had sold American technology to American enemies for profit. Derek Shaw was the last name on her list. Not the biggest name, not the mastermind, but the one who had personally approved the shipment that had killed Michael. The one who had signed the paperwork. The one who had pocketed his percentage and gone on to bigger and better things while her husband rotted in an unmarked grave. Margaret closed the file. She pulled the dog tags from under her shirt and pressed them to her lips. "Almost there, baby," she whispered. "Almost there." Kim. The next morning, everything changed. Margaret arrived at Building C at 6 a.m., earlier than anyone else on the logistics staff. She had work to do. Real work. The kind that didn't appear on any official task list. She was at her desk, buried in shipping manifests that told lies when the email appeared. Company-wide announcement, mandatory security drill. All personnel report to main training ground. 0800 hours. She read it twice. Security drill. Mandatory. Interesting. At 0800, she stood at the back of the crowd, invisible as always. 200 employees had gathered on the training ground, a mix of tactical operators, support staff, and administrative personnel. The operators stood in formation, rigid and ready. The support staff clustered in small groups, whispering nervously. Margaret watched everything. Shaw stood on a raised platform at the front, flanked by 2 lieutenants whose names Margaret had already memorized. Richards and Torres. Shaw's yes men. The kind of soldiers who followed orders without asking questions. "Listen up." Shaw's voice cut through the morning air. "What you're about to witness is a demonstration of what real tactical excellence looks like. My team will be running a hostage rescue simulation. Live rounds converted to training rounds. Full tactical conditions." He paused, scanning the crowd. His eyes passed over Margaret without stopping. She was invisible, just another gray-haired woman in the administrative section, not worth a second glance. "I want everyone, especially our support staff, to pay attention. This is what separates us from desk jockeys. This is what makes Blackridge the best in the business." The simulation began. Margaret watched with the eyes of someone who had run hundreds of real operations, who had trained with the best operators in the world, who had forgotten more about tactical combat than Derek Shaw had ever learned. What she saw made her jaw tighten. The entry was sloppy. The communication was fragmented. The team moved like individuals, not a unit. They cleared rooms without proper coverage. They left angles exposed. They made noise when they should have been silent. If this had been a real operation, people would have died. But the crowd cheered. The administrators applauded. The operators nodded in approval. Because it looked impressive. Because Shaw's team moved fast and spoke with authority and projected the image of competence. Image, not substance. Margaret said nothing, made no expression, filed everything away. The simulation ended with Shaw's team rescuing the hostage, a training dummy that they extracted with far too much celebration. Shaw raised his hand for silence. That, he said, is how professionals operate. Any questions? Silence. Then a voice. Quiet. Trembling slightly. But clear. Sir, I have a question. Every head turned. Elena Vasquez stepped forward from the crowd. Her face was pale but determined. Her hands were steady for the first time since Margaret had met her. Shaw's expression flickered. Annoyance. Suspicion. Lieutenant Vasquez, what is it? During the entry, sir, the second team cleared the left corridor without establishing rear coverage. In a real scenario, that exposure could have resulted in flanking fire. The silence that followed was absolute. Shaw's face hardened. Are you questioning my team's performance, Lieutenant? I'm making an observation, sir. The manual specifies. The manual. Shaw's voice dripped contempt. Tell me, Lieutenant, how many real operations have you run? Elena didn't answer. That's what I thought. Shaw stepped down from the platform, walking toward her. The crowd parted. You read manuals. I write them. You study tactics. I live them. And you have the audacity to question how my team operates. Sir, You were only embarrassing yourself. Shaw stopped directly in front of her. Again. Margaret watched Elena shrink. Watched the confidence drain from her face. Watched the fire in her eyes flicker and dim. And then, without meaning to, Margaret spoke. She's right, you know. The words hung in the air like a grenade waiting to explode. 200 faces turned toward the back of the crowd. Toward the corner where the administrative staff stood. Toward a gray-haired woman who should not have spoken. Who should not have been noticed. Who should not have existed in this moment. Shaw's eyes found her. For the first time, he actually looked at her, actually saw her. Excuse me. Margaret stepped forward. The crowd parted for her just as it had parted for Shaw, though for different reasons. The lieutenant is correct. Your second team's entry exposed a blind angle. In a real operation. And you are, Shaw's voice was ice. Margaret Callahan. Logistics. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Logistics. A paper pusher. A nobody. Shaw's lips curled. Logistics. Yes, sir. And you're going to tell me about tactical operations. I'm making an observation, sir. The same observation Lieutenant Vasquez made. The same observation anyone with basic tactical training would make. The silence changed, became sharper, more dangerous. Shaw stepped toward her. 1 step. 2. Until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne. Close enough that she could see the vein pulsing in his temple. Let me make something very clear, Mrs. Callahan. He emphasized the Mrs. made it sound like an insult. You push papers. You file reports. You exist to support the people who actually matter. And if you ever question my methods again, I will end your career before lunch. Are we understood? Margaret looked at him, and for just a moment so brief that only Shaw could see it, something changed in her eyes. Something cold. Something ancient. Something that had watched men die and felt nothing. Then it was gone. Understood, sir, she said quietly. My apologies. Shaw held her gaze for another moment, searching for something, finding nothing but the face of a tired, middle-aged woman who had just made a mistake. He turned away. Dismissed everyone. Return to your stations. The crowd dispersed. The moment passed. Shaw returned to his platform, already moving on to the next demonstration of his authority. But Elena stayed. She approached Margaret with wide eyes. What the hell was that? What was what? You stood up to him. Nobody stands up to him. Margaret shrugged. I made an observation. I was wrong to do it publicly. You weren't wrong about the observation. No, I wasn't. Elena studied her face. Really studied it. The way someone looks at a puzzle they can't quite solve. Who are you? She asked again. And don't tell me you're just a logistics analyst. That look in your eyes when you were talking to Shaw, I've seen that look before. In combat veterans. In people who've seen things. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Be careful, Elena, she said finally. Curiosity can be dangerous around here. So can silence. They stood there, two women who shouldn't have had anything in common. Two women who had just found something that felt like recognition. Meet me tonight, Margaret said quietly. Building C. After hours. There's something I want to show you. Why? Because you asked the right questions, and because someone needs to teach you how to find the answers. She walked away before Elena could respond. Behind her across the training ground, Derek Shaw was watching. He had dismissed Margaret Callahan as nobody, a moment of insubordination from a woman who didn't matter. But something bothered him. Something in the way she had stood. Something in the way she had looked at him. Something he couldn't quite identify. He would have to keep an eye on her. Just in case. That night, the logistics wing of Building C was dark, except for a single desk lamp in the corner. Margaret sat in her chair waiting. On her desk lay a series of documents she had spent the day assembling. Shipping manifests, financial records, communications intercepts, the pieces of a puzzle that would destroy Derek Shaw if assembled correctly. The door opened at 2200 hours exactly. Elena slipped inside, closing the door behind her. She moved like someone who had been trained to move quietly, but hadn't yet learned to make it look natural. You came, Margaret said. I almost didn't. Elena approached the desk. I spent all day convincing myself this was stupid, that you were just some crazy old woman who was going to get us both fired. And yet you're here. And yet I'm here. Elena sat down across from her. So, what am I looking at? Margaret slid the documents across the desk. What do you know about the weapons systems we ship through this facility? Elena frowned. Standard military hardware. Nothing classified. That's what the manifests say. Margaret tapped a finger on the top document. But manifests can lie. These shipments, the ones routed through our Singapore hub, don't match any official procurement orders. The quantities are wrong. The destinations are wrong. The serial numbers don't exist in any inventory database. Elena's frown deepened. She began reading. Her face changed as she processed what she was seeing. This can't be right. These numbers suggest weapons are being diverted, sold, to buyers who should never have access to them. That's impossible. The security protocols alone are controlled by one person. Margaret's voice was flat. Derek Shaw. Elena looked up sharply. You're accusing a company commander of treason. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm showing you documents. Drawing conclusions is up to you. The silence stretched. Elena's hands trembled as she held the papers. Her mind was racing. Margaret could see it in her eyes, the conflict, the disbelief, the slow, terrible dawning of possibility. Why are you showing me this? Elena asked finally. You just met me. For all you know, I could be working with Shaw. I could report everything you've said. Could you? I could. But you won't. How do you know? Margaret reached across the desk and took Elena's hand. It was a gesture that surprised them both. Intimate. Almost maternal. Because I've been watching you, Elena. I've seen how he treats you. I've seen the fire in your eyes every time he tells you that you don't belong. And I've seen you swallow that fire day after day because you think you have no other choice. Elena's breath caught. I'm offering you a choice, Margaret continued. Help me prove what Shaw is doing. Help me bring him down. Not for revenge, though that would be satisfying. For justice. For every soldier who died because the wrong people got the right weapons. For every woman he's ever told that she doesn't matter. And if we fail, then we fail, and Shaw wins, and everything stays exactly the way it's always been. Margaret squeezed her hand. But at least we'll have tried. At least we'll know that when it mattered, we didn't just survive. We fought. Elena was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was steady. What do you need me to do, Mom? The next 3 weeks transformed both of them. Margaret taught Elena things that weren't in any manual. How to access files without leaving traces. How to read between the lines of official communications. How to notice patterns that others overlooked. Elena, in turn, gave Margaret access to meetings she wouldn't otherwise attend, to conversations she wouldn't otherwise hear, to the inner workings of Shaw's operation that remained invisible to outsiders. They worked in secret, after hours, in stolen moments, building a case piece by piece, document by document. But they also built something else, trust. It happened slowly, in the quiet conversations that followed their work sessions, in the stories they shared, in the gradual revelation of who they really were beneath the roles they played. Elena learned about Margaret's husband, about Michael, about the mission that took him and the fire that still burned for justice. Margaret learned about Elena's grandmother, a woman who had fought in World War II, disguised as a man because women weren't allowed in combat, who had died never receiving recognition for what she had done, who had taught Elena that sometimes the strongest people are the ones history forgets to mention. She would have liked you, Elena said one night late when the documents were spread between them like a secret language only they understood. I would have liked her, Margaret replied. You remind me of her, actually. The way you watch everything. The way you never seem surprised. The way you look at Shaw like he's already defeated, he just doesn't know it yet. Margaret smiled. Your grandmother sounds like she was one hell of a woman. She was, and so are you. Elena paused. Maggie, I need to ask you something. Ask. Those files I found in the classified database, the ones about a woman who completed SEAL training in the 90s. The records are redacted, but the physical description. Elena's voice trailed off. That's you, isn't it? Margaret said nothing. I won't tell anyone, Elena continued quickly. I need to know. I need to know if this is real. If you're real. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Margaret reached under her shirt. She pulled out the dog tags that she never removed, placed them on the desk between them. Elena read the name stamped into the metal. Callahan Michael, USA, SEAL. We served together, Margaret said quietly. 15 years. He was my partner in every sense of the word. When he died... She stopped, started again. When he died, a part of me died with him. But another part, the angry part, the part that refuses to let injustice stand, that part got stronger. She took the dog tags back, pressed them to her heart. So yes, Elena, I'm real. Everything about me is real. And when we take Shaw down, that will be real too. Elena nodded slowly. Then let's make it real, she said. Together. They were so close. The evidence was nearly complete. The pattern was clear. Shaw had been diverting weapons for years, using the company's legitimate operations as cover. The Pentagon would have no choice but to investigate once the evidence was presented. But then on the morning of the 24th day, everything went wrong. Margaret arrived at Building C to find her desk empty, her files gone, her computer wiped clean, and Derek Shaw standing in her corner, waiting. Mrs. Callahan, he said pleasantly, we need to talk. Fuck. They walked together through the facility, Shaw leading, Margaret following. To anyone watching, it looked like a normal interaction. A commander and a subordinate. Nothing unusual, but Margaret knew better. You've been busy, Shaw said conversationally. Late nights, classified databases, shipping manifests you have no business accessing. I don't know what you're talking about, sir. No. Shaw stopped in front of a door Margaret didn't recognize. Opened it, gestured inside. Then perhaps you can explain this. The room was small, bare. interrogation style. Two chairs facing each other across an empty table. And in one chair, bound and gagged, was Elena. Her face was bruised, her left eye swollen shut. Blood crusted at the corner of her mouth. But her good eye found Margaret, and in it was not fear. It was apology. Lieutenant Vasquez was very cooperative, Shaw said, closing the door behind them. Eventually, she told us everything about your little investigation, about the evidence you've been gathering, about your plans to contact the Pentagon. Margaret said nothing. Her eyes remained on Elena. The question is, Shaw continued circling the room like a predator, what to do with you? You're clearly more than you appear. My people tell me your personnel file is mostly redacted classified above my clearance level. That's unusual for a logistics analyst. He stopped directly behind Elena, placed a hand on her shoulder. Elena flinched. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me exactly who you are, exactly who you're working for, and exactly what you've passed along about my operations. And then maybe I'll let the lieutenant here keep her career. If not. He squeezed Elena's shoulder. Hard. She didn't make a sound, but tears leaked from her good eye. Margaret's hands remained at her sides. Her breathing stayed even. Her face betrayed nothing. But inside something had shifted. Something cold and precise had awakened. The thing she had kept dormant for 6 years. The thing that had made her one of the most dangerous operators in the history of American Special Forces. Commander Shaw, she said calmly, may I ask you a question? You're not in a position to ask questions. Indulge me, just one. Shaw's eyes narrowed. Fine. One question. How many men are outside that door? Shaw blinked. The question clearly wasn't what he expected. 3, he said. Armed. If you're thinking of doing something stupid. I'm not thinking of doing something stupid. Margaret's voice was ice. I'm thinking of doing something very, very smart. She moved. What happened next took 4 seconds. In the first second, Margaret closed the distance between herself and Shaw with speed that shouldn't have been possible for a woman her age. Her hand shot out, striking his throat with surgical precision. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to disable. In the second, while Shaw choked and stumbled, she grabbed his sidearm from its holster, ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, tossed the weapon into the corner. In the third second, she kicked his left knee. The joint buckled with an audible crack. Shaw went down screaming. In the fourth second, she was behind Elena, cutting the ropes with a knife that had appeared from nowhere, lifting the young woman to her feet. Can you walk? Margaret asked quietly. Elena stared at her. Shock, wonder, something like awe. Who are you? I'll explain later. Can you walk? Yes. Yes, I can walk. The door burst open. 3 armed guards, just as Shaw had promised. They took in the scene, their commander on the ground, screaming, clutching his shattered knee, the 2 women standing over him. The lead guard raised his weapon. Freeze! Margaret's hand was still on Elena's arm. Steady. Calm. Gentlemen, she said, her voice carrying a command authority that made all 3 of them hesitate. I'm going to say this once. I am a federal operative working under Pentagon authority. Commander Shaw is under investigation for treason. You have 2 choices: stand down and be witnesses, or intervene and be accomplices. The guards exchanged glances. She's lying, Shaw gasped from the floor. She's a spy. If I were lying, Margaret interrupted, why would my personnel file be classified above your commander's clearance level? Who exactly does that? More exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping into their expressions. Make your choice, Margaret said. You have 5 seconds. 1 second. 2. The lead guard lowered his weapon. We'll stand down, he said, but you better be telling the truth. I always tell the truth, Margaret replied. It's easier to remember. She guided Elena toward the door, toward freedom, toward whatever came next. Behind them, Derek Shaw lay on the cold floor, clutching his ruined knee, watching his career and his freedom drain away like blood from a wound. He had underestimated her. They always did. The hours that followed were a blur of activity. Margaret's Pentagon contacts arrived within 2 hours. The facility was locked down. Shaw was taken into custody. The evidence that Margaret and Elena had gathered was secured, copied, and transmitted to the appropriate authorities. By midnight, it was over. Margaret stood outside Building C, breathing the cool Virginia night air. Her hands finally trembled, the adrenaline fading, the enormity of what had happened beginning to sink in. Elena found her there. "They're saying Shaw will face court-martial," Elena said quietly. "Treason, conspiracy. The weapons he sold, they traced them to 4 different attacks. Dozens of American soldiers dead." Margaret nodded slowly. "Including your husband." "Including my husband." They stood in silence for a long moment. "What happens now?" Elena asked. Now I disappear again. Another identity. Another mission. Another invisible woman nobody notices. And me?" Margaret turned to look at her, really look at her, this young woman who had been broken and rebuilt, who had risked everything on trust she shouldn't have given, who had survived. "You have choices, Elena. The Pentagon is impressed with what you did. They're offering you a position with their internal investigations unit. The chance to do what we just did, but bigger, more important. Is that what you're recommending?" "I'm not recommending anything. I'm just telling you what's possible." Margaret paused. "But if you're asking what I think you've got a gift. Not just for fighting, anyone can learn to fight. For seeing. For understanding. For knowing when something's wrong and having the courage to act on it. I learned that from you. You already had it. I just helped you find it." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Will I see you again?" Margaret smiled, that warm, forgettable smile that hid so much. "Probably not. That's not how this works." "But you don't need me anymore, Elena. You never really did." She turned to walk away. "Maggie." Margaret stopped. "Thank you," Elena said. "For everything. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For showing me what real strength looks like." Margaret looked back over her shoulder. "Remember what I told you that first night? Real power never needs to prove itself. It simply stands and others rise with it." She nodded once. "Rise, Elena, as high as you can go. And when you get there, reach back for the ones still climbing." She walked into the darkness. Elena watched her go until there was nothing left to see. Then she turned and walked back into the light. 6 months later, a young woman arrived at Blackridge Security Solutions for her first day of training. She was small, nervous, carrying herself like someone who had been told she didn't belong. But when she asked for directions, a woman with dark hair and captain's bars stopped to help her. "Don't worry," Captain Elena Vasquez said. "You're exactly where you're supposed to be." And somewhere far away in a place that didn't exist on any map, Margaret Callahan received a message on a secure channel. 3 words. Another one rising. She smiled. And then she went back to being invisible. Because that was who she was. The woman nobody noticed. The woman who changed everything. The woman who proved that sometimes the most powerful person in any room is the one you never see coming. The secure phone rang at 3:47 a.m. Margaret was awake before the second ring. After 22 years in special operations, her body had forgotten how to sleep through anything. She answered without speaking. "We have a problem." The voice belonged to Director Samuel Hayes, her Pentagon handler. A man who never called unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. Shaw is dead, killed in his cell 3 hours ago, made to look like suicide." Margaret sat up slowly. Her mind was already racing, processing implications, calculating possibilities. He was going to talk. He was going to name names. The people above him, the ones who actually run the network. Hayes paused. "Maggie, we got it wrong. Shaw wasn't the top of the chain. He wasn't even close." "Who?" "We don't know yet. But whoever it is, they have reach inside federal detention facilities. They have people in positions we never suspected. and they know about you. Margaret's hand moved instinctively to the dog tags under her shirt. Define know about me. Your cover identity has been compromised. Margaret Callahan no longer exists in any database. Your apartment in Maryland was searched last night, and there's a contract out. How much? $2 million, delivered to anyone who can confirm your death. Margaret was quiet for a moment. $2 million was serious money, the kind of money that attracted serious professionals. What do you need me to do? Come in, we'll relocate you. New identity, No. Maggie. Shaw was a piece, just a piece. I spent 6 years tracking the network that killed Michael, and I'm not going to hide while the real people responsible are still out there. Her voice hardened. Give me a name, a lead, something. Hayes sighed. She could hear the exhaustion in his breath. There's a woman, Shaw's former assistant. She disappeared 2 days before his arrest and resurfaced yesterday at Blackridge. She's using a new identity, but our facial recognition flagged her. Who is she? Her name is Catherine Moore. On paper, she's a consultant brought in to help restructure after Shaw's removal. In reality, she was Shaw's handler, the person who gave him orders. And she's back at Blackridge. She's not just back, she's taken over. The board appointed her interim director 3 days ago. Margaret processed this. The enemy had moved fast. Too fast. They weren't just covering their tracks, they were consolidating control. Elena Vasquez is still there. Captain Vasquez has been raising concerns about Moore, asking questions, making herself visible. That's dangerous. That's why I'm calling you Maggie. She's going to get herself killed, and she's the only person inside who knows what we know. Margaret stood, walked to the window. Outside, the city was dark and quiet. Send me everything you have on Catherine Moore. Does that mean you're going in? It means I'm going to finish what I started. Shaw was never the end game. He was just the door. And now that door is open. She ended the call. In the darkness of her safe house, Margaret began to prepare. The invisible woman was about to become very visible indeed. Elena Vasquez knew something was wrong the moment Catherine Moore walked into Blackridge. It wasn't anything obvious. Moore was professional, polished everything a corporate restructuring consultant should be. She smiled at the right moments. She said the right things. She projected competence and calm. But her eyes were wrong. Elena had learned to read eyes. Maggie had taught her that. The face lies, Maggie had said during one of their late-night training sessions. The voice lies, but the eyes tell you everything if you know how to look. Catherine Moore's eyes were the eyes of a predator wearing a human mask. Captain Vasquez. Moore's voice was warm as she approached Elena in the hallway. I've heard wonderful things about you, the hero of the Shaw investigation. I'm not a hero, ma'am. I just did my job. Modest. I like that. Moore fell into step beside her. I understand you worked closely with a woman named Margaret Callahan, the one who actually exposed Shaw. Elena kept her expression neutral. She was a federal operative. I was her inside contact. And where is she now? I don't know. She disappeared after Shaw's arrest. That's standard procedure for undercover personnel. Moore nodded slowly. Of course. Standard procedure. They walked in silence for a moment. Tell me, Captain, did Ms. Callahan ever mention anything about Shaw's connections, his network, the people he worked with? Elena's instincts screamed warning. She didn't share operational details with me. I was just a source, not a partner. Just a source. Moore smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I see. She stopped walking, turned to face Elena directly. I'm going to be honest with you, Captain. There are concerns about ongoing security leaks at this facility. Concerns that Shaw's removal didn't solve the underlying problems. I'm here to identify those problems and eliminate them. Eliminate them however necessary. Moore's voice dropped. I'll be conducting interviews with everyone who had contact with the investigation. You'll be hearing from my office soon. She walked away without waiting for a response. Elena stood in the hallway, her heart pounding. She needed to warn someone. She needed to find Maggie, but she didn't know how. and she had a terrible feeling that time was running out. The new employee arrived at Blackridge the following Monday. Her name was Grace Mitchell. Gray hair, mid-50s, unremarkable in every way. She had been hired as a records clerk, the kind of position that nobody paid attention to. Elena almost didn't recognize her. "Conference room B," Maggie murmured as she passed Elena in the hallway. 20 minutes. Come alone." Elena's hands shook as she continued walking. She managed to keep her face composed, managed to look like nothing had happened. But inside, hope and fear battled for dominance. Maggie was back. Whatever was coming, Elena wouldn't have to face it alone. The conference room was empty when Elena arrived. She had barely closed the door when Maggie emerged from the shadows. "You've been compromised. Hello to you too. This isn't a joke, Elena. Catherine Moore is Shaw's handler. She's not here to restructure, she's here to clean up, and you're on her list." Elena sank into a chair. "I know. She's already questioned me once. She's asking about you." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. That you were a federal operative. That I don't know where you are." "Good. Keep it that way." Maggie sat across from her. Even in the harsh fluorescent light, she looked exactly the same. Calm, controlled, dangerous. "Shaw was killed in custody," Maggie continued. 3 days ago, made to look like suicide." Elena's face went pale. "They're eliminating witnesses. They're eliminating everyone who can connect them to the weapons trafficking. Shaw was going to name the people above him. They couldn't allow that. So Moore is here to finish what Shaw started, but she's also here to identify anyone who knows too much, anyone who might be a threat." Maggie leaned forward. "Elena, I need you to understand something. These people aren't like Shaw. Shaw was arrogant, sloppy, operating on ego. Moore is a professional. She's been doing this for 20 years without leaving a trace. How do we stop her?" "We don't stop her, we expose her. But to do that we need evidence, hard evidence that connects her to the network." "Where do we find that?" Maggie pulled out a small device, a thumb drive. "Moore has been using Shaw's old office. She's been careful encrypted communications, secure terminals, but she made one mistake. She's been accessing a server that doesn't exist on any Blackridge network map. A hidden server. A very hidden server. It's located in the basement of Building D. Officially, that space is used for storage. Unofficially, it's where Shaw ran his operation. And now Moore is using it. You want to access the server? I want you to access the server. I can't get into Building D without triggering alerts. Moore is watching for me specifically, but you have legitimate access. You're a captain conducting routine security checks." Elena stared at the thumb drive. "If I get caught, you won't get caught. I'll be watching. I'll have your back." Like last time, Maggie's expression flickered. For just a moment, Elena saw something beneath the calm. Guilt. Pain. "I'm sorry I disappeared. After Shaw. I thought you'd be safer without me around. I was wrong." "You were wrong," Elena agreed. "But you came back. That's what matters." She took the thumb drive. "When?" "Tonight. 2300 hours. Moore has a meeting with the board that will keep her occupied until midnight. That gives you a 90-minute window." "And if something goes wrong?" Maggie reached across the table, took Elena's hand. "Then I'll burn this whole place down to get you out. That's a promise." Elena looked at her. At this woman who had appeared in her life like a ghost and changed everything. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Maggie was quiet for a long moment. "Because you remind me of someone I used to be. Before the missions, before the losses, before I learned that the world could be cruel." She squeezed Elena's hand. "And because everyone deserves someone who believes in them. You believed in me when you had no reason to. Let me return the favor." Elena nodded slowly. "Tonight. 2300 hours. Tonight." Maggie released her hand and stood. "And Elena, be careful. Moore isn't just dangerous, she's smart. If she suspects anything, she'll act, fast and without mercy." I understand. I hope you do. She disappeared through the door. Elena sat alone in the conference room, the thumb drive cold against her palm. In a few hours, she would either be a hero or a corpse. She prayed she would be able to tell the difference. At 22:47 hours, Elena made her move. Building D was quiet at this hour. The storage levels were unstaffed, protected only by electronic locks and security cameras that Elena had been mapping for 3 days. She moved with purpose. A captain conducting security checks. Nothing suspicious, nothing unusual. The hidden server room was exactly where Maggie said it would be. Behind a false wall in the deepest sub-basement. A wall that looked like solid concrete but concealed a door accessible only by a key code that Maggie had somehow obtained. Elena punched in the numbers. The wall slid open. Inside the server hummed with quiet menace. Banks of computers. Monitors displaying data streams. A setup that belonged in an intelligence agency, not a private military contractor. Elena inserted the thumb drive. The download began. 3 minutes. That's all she needed. 3 minutes to copy everything on this server and disappear. 2 minutes in, she heard the footsteps. Her blood turned to ice. Captain Vasquez, Catherine Moore's voice echoed through the room. I had a feeling you'd find your way here eventually. Elena turned slowly. Moore stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 armed guards. Her expression was calm, almost amused. I canceled my board meeting, by the way, just in case you were counting on that. I don't know what you're talking about. I was conducting a routine security check and found this room. It's not on any facility map. A routine security check. At 11 p.m. In a hidden basement. Moore stepped closer. You know I almost admire your loyalty. To her. The invisible woman who taught you so well. I don't know who you mean. Margaret Callahan, or whatever she's calling herself now. She's here, isn't she, at this facility, watching, waiting. Elena said nothing. Moore smiled. Your silence tells me everything I need to know. She nodded to the guards. Take her. We'll have a conversation about exactly what she knows and who she's told. The guards moved forward. Elena's hand moved to her sidearm. I wouldn't, Moore said. My men have orders to shoot if you resist. And unlike Shaw, I don't waste time with dramatic confrontations. You'll simply die. Here. Now. Another tragic accident in a dangerous profession. Elena's hands stopped. The guards grabbed her arms. One of them pulled the thumb drive from the computer. Download complete, he reported. She got everything. Of course she did. Moore took the drive. That was the point, wasn't it? Get the evidence. Take it to the authorities. Expose the network. She walked closer to Elena, close enough to whisper. But here's what you don't understand, Captain. The authorities don't matter. The evidence doesn't matter. The people I work for have connections in every agency, every department, every level of government. Shaw was disposable. I am not. Maggie will find me. Maggie will try, and she'll fail. Because I've been hunting women like her for 20 years, and I've never lost. She stepped back. Take her to the interrogation room, and tell our perimeter teams to stay alert. We have a ghost to catch. Maggie watched from the shadows as they dragged Elena across the compound. Her hands were steady, her breathing was calm, but inside something cold and ancient was waking up. She had promised to protect Elena. She had failed, but she would not fail to save her. Moving like smoke through the night, Maggie began to hunt. The interrogation room was cold. Elena sat in a metal chair, her hands bound behind her back. The guards had left. Moore remained circling slowly, a predator savoring the moment before the kill. Let's start simple, Moore said. Where is Margaret Callahan? I don't know. When did she arrive at this facility? I don't know. What evidence has she already transmitted to her Pentagon contacts? I don't know. Moore sighed. Captain, I'm going to give you some credit. You're brave, loyal. Those are admirable qualities, but they're not going to help you here. She pulled a chair close, sat directly in front of Elena. I know you think she's coming to save you. The legendary ghost operative. The woman who destroyed Derek Shaw in 4 seconds. But here's the thing about legends, they tend to disappoint in person. You don't know her. I know her better than you do. Moore's voice dropped. I've studied her for years. I know about her husband, about the mission that killed him. I know she's been hunting the network ever since, following trails, eliminating targets one by one. Then you know she won't stop. Oh, I'm counting on that. Moore smiled. You're not just a prisoner, Captain. You're bait. And when Margaret comes for you, and she will come, she'll walk into a trap she can't escape. Elena's heart hammered. She's not stupid enough to fall for that. Isn't she? She came back to this facility despite knowing she was compromised. She revealed herself to you despite knowing you were being watched. And she's out there right now trying to figure out how to get you out. Moore leaned forward. Love makes us stupid, Captain. Even the best of us. And whether she admits it or not, Margaret Callahan loves you. Like a daughter. Like a protege. Like the legacy she never had. Elena said nothing. Moore stood. I'm going to let you sit here for a while. Think about your choices. When I come back, we'll have a real conversation, and you're going to tell me everything you know. She walked to the door. And, Captain, if you're praying for a miracle, don't bother. Miracles don't happen in places like this. The door closed. Elena sat in the cold silence, testing her bonds, searching for weakness. Moore was wrong about one thing. Miracles didn't just happen. They were made. By women like Margaret Callahan. The first guard went down at 1:37 hours. Maggie moved through the compound like a memory. 22 years of special operations had taught her things that couldn't be learned in any classroom. How to walk without sound, how to see without being seen, how to make violence silent and precise. The second guard followed 3 minutes later, then the third. She was getting closer, but so was Moore. The trap was obvious. Elena in an interrogation room, guarded but accessible. Moore waiting somewhere, watching, ready to spring the moment Maggie revealed herself. It was the kind of trap that would work on most people. Maggie was not most people. She reached the maintenance corridor behind the interrogation wing. Service access. Unmapped on official facility plans. She had memorized every blueprint, every electrical diagram, every ventilation route in the 3 days before revealing herself to Elena. The air duct was tight, but passable. She moved through it inch by inch, controlling her breathing, ignoring the protests of muscles that weren't as young as they used to be. The vent cover overlooked the interrogation room. Elena sat alone, still bound, head bowed. Maggie assessed the room. One door. No cameras visible, but certainly monitored. Moore would know the moment that door opened. She wouldn't use the door. Working silently, Maggie removed the vent cover, lowered herself into the room. Elena's head snapped up. Don't talk, Maggie whispered. Just listen. She moved to Elena's bonds, started working on the knots. Moore has this place surrounded. We have maybe 4 minutes before she realizes I'm here. She said you would come. She said it was a trap. Everything is a trap. The question is who's really caught. Maggie freed Elena's hands. Can you fight? Elena rubbed her wrists. I can try. Good enough. She helped Elena to her feet. There's a service tunnel beneath this building. Leads to the motor pool. I have a vehicle waiting. What about Moore? Maggie's expression hardened. Moore isn't getting away. But first, I need you safe. Maggie. This isn't a discussion, Elena. You're not dying tonight. Not for me. Not for anything. She moved toward the vent. The door exploded inward. Moore stood in the doorway, flanked by 6 armed guards. Her face showed no surprise, only satisfaction. Right on schedule, Moore said. I told you she'd come, Captain. I told you she couldn't help herself. Maggie stepped in front of Elena. Her hands were empty, but her eyes held something that made even the guards hesitate. Catherine Moore, Maggie said calmly. You're under arrest for conspiracy weapons trafficking and the murder of Derek Shaw. Moore laughed. Arrest, you're outnumbered, outgunned, and trapped. You're not arresting anyone. Maybe not, but they are. She pulled a small device from her pocket, pressed a button. Every light in the building went out. In the darkness, Maggie moved. The first guard went down before he could raise his weapon. The second crumpled with a choked cry. The third fired blindly, hitting nothing. Elena hit the floor, rolling clear, trusting Maggie to do what Maggie did. The fight lasted 11 seconds. When the emergency lights flickered on, 6 guards lay unconscious on the floor, and Maggie had her hand around Catherine Moore's throat. "You were right about one thing," Maggie said quietly. "Love does make us stupid. It makes us take risks we shouldn't take. It makes us vulnerable." She tightened her grip. "But it also makes us fight harder than people like you can ever understand. Because we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone we love, everyone we've lost, everyone we refuse to lose." Moore's face was turning red. Her hands clawed at Maggie's wrist. "You can't kill me," she gasped. "You need what I know. The names. The network. It dies with me." "You're right. I can't kill you." Maggie released her. Moore collapsed, gasping. "But I can break you, and before this night is over, you're going to tell me everything." She turned to Elena. "Time to go." They made it to the motor pool. Behind them, alarms began to wail. The compound was waking up, realizing something had gone terribly wrong. Elena slid into the passenger seat. Maggie took the wheel. "What about Moore?" "Pentagon teams are inbound. They'll secure her." Maggie started the engine. "Our job is done." "Is it?" Maggie looked at her. "Moore said she's been doing this for 20 years, Elena continued. That she's part of something bigger, something untouchable. Is that true?" Maggie was quiet for a moment. "Yes." "Then how do we stop it?" "We keep fighting, one battle at a time, one name at a time, until there's no one left to fight." She accelerated through the gate past guards too confused to respond into the night. "That could take years." "It probably will. And you're going to do it alone." Maggie glanced at her. "I was. But I don't think I am anymore." Elena settled back in her seat. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." Then, they drove in silence for a while. Behind them, Blackridge faded into the darkness. Ahead, the road stretched empty and endless. 2 women, 1 mission, and a network of enemies who had just learned a very important lesson. Never underestimate the invisible woman, and never ever threaten the people she loves. The night swallowed them whole, and somewhere in a secure Pentagon facility, Catherine Moore was beginning to talk. Catherine Moore talked for 17 hours. She gave names, dates, account numbers. The entire architecture of a network that had been selling American weapons to American enemies for over a decade. Senators, generals, corporate executives, people whose faces appeared on magazine covers and whose hands had shaken presidents. But she saved the biggest name for last. Director Samuel Hayes sat across from Maggie in the Pentagon briefing room. His face gray with exhaustion and something else. Something that looked like dread. "She's lying," Maggie said flatly. "She's not lying. We verified it. 3 independent sources." "Then your sources are compromised." "Maggie, he's my handler, Samuel. He's been my handler for 6 years. He brought me into this mission. He's been playing you from the beginning." The words hung in the air like poison. Maggie stared at Hayes. 20 years she had known this man. 20 years of missions of trust, of believing that at least some people in Washington were fighting the right fight. "Show me the evidence." Hayes slid a folder across the table. Maggie opened it. The first page was a photograph. Her husband, Michael, in tactical gear, standing beside a man she recognized immediately. A man she had trusted with her life, Deputy Director Thomas Crane. "This was taken 2 weeks before Michael's unit was ambushed," Hayes said quietly. "Crane was the one who approved the mission. He was also the one who leaked the coordinates to the network." Maggie's hands didn't shake. Her face didn't change. But something inside her cracked. something she had been holding together for 6 years. Crane killed Michael. Crane killed Michael, and he's been using you ever since, feeding you targets, directing your attention, making sure you never got close enough to the truth to see it. The targets were real. The targets were sacrifices. Low-level operatives the network was willing to burn to maintain your trust, to keep you hunting shadows while the real people stayed safe. Maggie closed the folder. Where is he? Maggie, you can't. Where is he? Hayes held her gaze for a long moment. He's at a private estate in Virginia, hosting a fundraiser tonight, 300 of Washington's most powerful people. Security that would make the Secret Service jealous. I don't care about security. I know you don't. That's what scares me. Maggie stood. Thank you for telling me, Samuel. I know it wasn't easy. What are you going to do? She walked toward the door. What I should have done 6 years ago. Maggie, if you go after Crane, there's no coming back. He's too connected, too protected. Even if you get to him, they'll destroy you. She stopped at the door. They already destroyed everything I loved. What's left to lose? She walked out. Hayes sat alone in the briefing room, staring at the folder. He reached for his phone, dialed a number he had hoped never to use. It's Hayes. We have a problem. She knows about Crane. He listened for a moment. No, I don't think we can stop her. I think the only question is how many people she takes down before it's over. He ended the call, and he prayed for the first time in 30 years that Margaret Callahan would survive the night. So, Elena found Maggie in the parking garage loading weapons into a black SUV. You're not going alone. Yes, I am. The hell you are. Maggie stopped, turned. Elena, this isn't your fight. You made it my fight. The moment you walked into my life and showed me what real courage looks like. The moment you saved me from more. The moment you trusted me with the truth. Elena stepped closer. I'm not the scared lieutenant Shaw tried to break. You made sure of that, so don't you dare try to protect me now. Crane has an army, and you have me. That's not enough. It was enough at Blackridge. Maggie's jaw tightened. This is different. Crane isn't Shaw. He isn't Moore. He's the head of the snake. The man who's been running this network for 20 years. The man who killed my husband and turned me into his weapon. Then he doesn't get to win. Not tonight. Not ever. They stood facing each other, two women forged in fire, bound by something stronger than blood. If you come with me, Maggie said slowly, you might not come back. If I don't come with you, I'll never forgive myself. A long moment passed. Maggie reached into the SUV, pulled out a tactical vest, threw it to Elena. Suit up. We leave in 10 minutes. Elena caught the vest. One question. What? When we find Crane, what's the plan? Maggie's eyes went cold. The plan is to make him answer for every life he's destroyed, every soldier he's betrayed, every family he's shattered. And then we burn his empire to the ground. Elena pulled on the vest. Good. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. The Crane estate sprawled across 200 acres of Virginia countryside. Maggie studied it through binoculars from a ridge half a mile away. Security teams patrolled the perimeter. Cameras covered every approach. The main house blazed with light, filled with the wealthy and powerful, who had no idea what their host truly was. 40 guards minimum, Elena reported. Armed, professional. This isn't going to be subtle. Subtle stopped being an option the moment Moore opened her mouth. So we just walk in. Maggie lowered the binoculars. I walk in, you provide overwatch. Maggie, listen to me. Maggie turned to face her. I need someone outside. Someone who can call in the cavalry if this goes wrong. Someone who can make sure Crane doesn't escape if I fail. You won't fail. I might. I'm 54 years old, Elena. I'm not the operator I used to be, and Crane has been preparing for this moment for 20 years. Then let me go with you. Let me... No. Maggie gripped her shoulders. You're my backup, my insurance. The person who makes sure that no matter what happens tonight, Crane faces justice. Can you do that? Elena's eyes were wet. She blinked the tears away. Yes, I can do that. Good. Maggie released her. Position yourself on the East Ridge. You'll have a clear line of sight to the main entrance. If I'm not out in 90 minutes, call Hayes. Tell him everything. Make sure the world knows what Crane did. And if you are out in 90 minutes, Maggie almost smiled. Then we'll have a hell of a story to tell. She started down the ridge toward the estate. Maggie, she stopped. Thank you, Elena said. For everything. For believing in me. For showing me who I could be. Maggie looked back. You showed yourself, Elena. I just held the mirror. She disappeared into the darkness. Elena raised her rifle, settled into position, and began to pray. The service entrance was guarded by two men who never saw Maggie coming. She moved through them like a shadow, leaving them unconscious but alive. She wasn't here for foot soldiers. She was here for the general. The servant corridors of the estate were empty. The staff had been dismissed for the evening. Only security remained, and they were focused on the perimeter, not the inside. Crane's arrogance was showing. Maggie navigated by memory. She had studied the blueprints for 3 hours before leaving Washington. Every hallway, every room, every possible escape route. Crane's private study was on the 3rd floor. That's where he would be. Away from the party. Away from the noise. Conducting business that couldn't be witnessed. She reached the main staircase. 3 guards at the bottom, 2 more at the top. Too many to take silently. She pulled out her phone, typed a message. Distraction. East Wing. Now. 3 seconds later, an alarm began to wail. The guards moved. All of them. Running toward the source of the alarm that Elena had triggered from outside. Maggie took the stairs 3 at a time. The 3rd floor was quiet. Thick carpets absorbed her footsteps. Expensive art watched from the walls, the accumulated wealth of decades of betrayal. The study door was at the end of the hall. Maggie stopped outside it. 22 years of service. 6 years of hunting. Every loss, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. It had all led to this moment. She pushed open the door. Thomas Crane sat behind a mahogany desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand, as if he had been waiting for her. Margaret. His voice was warm, welcoming. The voice of the man she had trusted for 6 years. I wondered when you would come. You knew. I've known since Moore started talking. I have people everywhere, Margaret, even in Pentagon interrogation rooms. He stood slowly. 63 years old, silver-haired patrician. The kind of man who belonged in history books, not prison cells. You killed Michael. I did what was necessary. Necessary. The word tasted like poison. Your husband was getting too close. He had found documents that would have exposed the network years ahead of schedule. We weren't ready. We needed more time. So you murdered him. I eliminated a threat. There's a difference. There's no difference. Not to me. Crane sighed. I always knew you would be a problem. From the moment I recruited you after Michael's death. You were too smart, too driven, too unwilling to accept the world as it is. The world doesn't have to be this way. People like you make it this way. People like me keep the world turning. Do you know how many operations your husband's documents would have compromised? How many assets would have been exposed? How many American interests would have suffered? I don't care about American interests. I care about justice. Crane laughed. Justice. Such a quaint concept. There is no justice, Margaret. There is only power. The power to act. The power to decide who lives and who dies. The power to shape the world according to your vision. Your vision killed thousands of soldiers. My vision maintained American dominance for 2 decades. The weapons we sold funded operations that official channels couldn't touch. They bought allies, eliminated enemies, preserved the balance of power that keeps this country safe. That's what you tell yourself. That's what's true. You think you're the hero of this story. You're not. You're a blunt instrument. a weapon I pointed at problems and let loose. Every target you eliminated was someone who threatened to expose what we built. You were never hunting the network, Margaret. You were protecting it. The words hit like bullets. Maggie's hand trembled on her weapon. The first time it had trembled in 20 years. You're lying. Am I Shaw? Moore. The others. They were all liabilities. People who knew too much, demanded too much, became too visible. I used you to clean up my messes while believing you were pursuing justice. No. Yes. Every name I gave you. Every target I approved. They were all people I needed eliminated. You were my perfect assassin, Margaret, driven by grief, blinded by righteousness, utterly convinced you were doing the right thing. Maggie raised her weapon. Crane didn't flinch. You won't shoot me. Watch me. You won't shoot me because I'm the only one who knows where the files are. The real files. Not the scraps Moore gave you. The complete record of every transaction, every name, every dollar that has flowed through this network for 20 years. I don't need your files. Moore gave us enough. Moore gave you middle management. I'm offering you the board of directors. Maggie's finger tightened on the trigger. Senators, generals, CEOs, foreign heads of state, people whose exposure would reshape the global balance of power. Crane's voice dropped. Kill me and you get revenge. Let me live and you get something far more valuable. What? Victory? The word hung between them. I'm an old man, Margaret, 73 years old. I have maybe 10 years left, most of them in declining health. What good is killing me? I'll die anyway. But the network will survive. It will adapt. It will find new leadership and continue exactly as it has for decades. Then I'll hunt them too. You'll hunt them forever. There will always be another name, another target, another shadow to chase. Unless you stop the network at its source. Unless you expose everyone at once so completely and so publicly that there's nowhere left to hide. And you're offering to help me do that. I'm offering to give you everything in exchange for one thing. What? Crane smiled. Let me disappear. A quiet retirement somewhere warm. No prosecution. No prison. Just an old man living out his final years in peace. After everything you've done, after everything I've done, I'm offering you the chance to undo it, to bring down the entire system, to create the justice you've been chasing for 6 years. He spread his hands. Your choice, Margaret. Revenge or justice. You can't have both. Maggie stared at him. The man who had killed her husband. The man who had used her as a weapon. The man who had orchestrated more suffering than she could comprehend, and he was asking her to let him go. Her finger touched the trigger. 1 bullet. That's all it would take. 1 bullet and Michael would be avenged. 1 bullet and 6 years of pain would finally have meaning. But 1 bullet wouldn't stop the network. 1 bullet wouldn't save the soldiers still being killed by American weapons in enemy hands. 1 bullet wouldn't bring justice to the thousands who had suffered. She lowered her weapon. The files, all of them, every name, every transaction, everything. You have my word. Your word means nothing. Then have something that does. Crane walked to a painting on the wall, moved it aside. Behind it was a safe. He opened it and pulled out a hard drive. 20 years of records. Encrypted, but I'll give you the key. It's all there, Margaret. Everything you need to bring down an empire. He held out the drive. Maggie took it. If this is a trick, it's not a trick. I'm 73 years old, tired, ready to be done with all of this. I built something I thought would make America stronger. Instead, it made monsters of us all. He met her eyes, including me. You don't get absolution. I'm not asking for absolution. I'm asking for peace. The only peace available to men like me. Maggie tucked the drive into her vest. You have 48 hours. After that, I release everything. And if I find out you warned anyone, if I find out you did anything to protect yourself or your network, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. And I will not stop. Do you understand? I understand. She turned toward the door. Margaret. She stopped. For what it's worth, I am sorry about Michael. He was a good man, the best I ever worked with. If there had been another way, there's always another way. You chose not to find it. She walked out. Elena was waiting at the extraction point, her face tight with worry. I heard voices over the comm. What happened? Maggie held up the drive. We won. Won? You let him go. I saw him walking to the helipad. You just let him... I let him give us everything, every name, every dollar, every secret this network has been hiding for 20 years. Elena stared at the drive. Is that real? It's real. And when we release it, the world will change. Senators will fall. Generals will be court-martialed. The people who have been selling our soldiers' lives for profit will finally face justice. And Crane, Maggie's jaw tightened. Crane gets to live. That was the price. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's the choice I had to make. She met Elena's eyes. Revenge or justice? I chose justice. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Michael would be proud of you. Maggie's composure cracked. Just for a second. Just enough for Elena to see the woman beneath the warrior. I hope so. I hope I made the right choice. You did. They walked to the SUV together. What happens now? Elena asked. Now we go to Washington. We meet with Hayes. We verify every name on this drive, and then we blow the whole thing wide open. Just like that. Just like that. Elena smiled. You know, when I met you, I thought you were just some crazy old woman who was going to get us both killed. And now I think you're a crazy old woman who's going to change the world. Maggie laughed. Actually laughed. Get in the car, Elena. We have work to do. They drove into the night. Behind them, a helicopter rose from the Crane estate and disappeared into the darkness. An old man running from the consequences of a lifetime of evil. But there was nowhere far enough to run. Not from what was coming. So, 47 hours later, the first arrests began. Senator Morrison of Texas, General Patterson at the Pentagon, the CEO of 3 defense contractors, a deputy secretary of state. The news exploded across every channel, every website, every newspaper in the country. Massive corruption scandal rocks. Washington, dozens arrested in weapons trafficking investigation. The network, how American officials sold weapons to enemies for decades. Maggie watched the coverage from a safe house in Maryland. Elena sat beside her, both of them exhausted, but unable to look away. We did it, Elena said quietly. Not yet. Crane is still out there. You said 48 hours. I said he had 48 hours before I released everything. I didn't say I would stop hunting him after that. Elena turned to look at her. You're going after him. I made a deal. I kept my word. But I never said anything about what happens next. Maggie, you can't just... He killed Michael. He used me for 6 years. He destroyed countless lives. Maggie's voice was ice. A deal is a deal. But deals can be renegotiated. That's not how it works. That's exactly how it works. The network is finished. The people he protected are going to prison. There's no one left for him to warn, no one left for him to save. So what's the point? Revenge. Justice. The justice he thought he could buy his way out of. Elena stood. If you go after him, you become what he said you were. A weapon. An assassin. Someone who kills because they cannot, because they should. Maybe that's what I am. No, it's not. Elena grabbed her arm. I know who you are, Maggie. You're the woman who taught me that real strength isn't about violence. That real power is about lifting others up. That justice isn't just punishment, it's redemption. It's building something better. Crane doesn't deserve redemption. Maybe not, but you do. They stood facing each other. Let him go, Elena said. Elena. Let him rot in whatever hole he's hiding in, knowing that everything he built is gone, knowing that his legacy is destruction, knowing that history will remember him as a traitor. She squeezed Maggie's arm. That's a worse punishment than death, and you don't have to carry the weight of killing him. Maggie was silent for a long time. The television droned in the background. More arrests, more revelations, more justice being served. Michael would want me to kill him. Would he? Or would he want you to live? To build something new to honor his memory by becoming more than just a hunter? Maggie closed her eyes. Michael's face swam in her memory. His smile, his laugh, the way he looked at her before every mission like she was the only person in the world who mattered. "I'll see you on the other side, Mags." He had always said that, and she had always said it back. She opened her eyes. "You're right." "What?" "You're right. Michael wouldn't want me to become a murderer. He'd want me to live, to keep fighting the right way, to find something worth living for beyond revenge." Elena's grip on her arm relaxed. "So you'll let Crane go." "I'll let Crane face whatever fate finds him, but I won't be the one to deliver it." She stood, walked to the window. "There's something else I need to do." "What?" Maggie turned back. "I need to start over. Build something new, something that honors Michael's memory, something that helps the people who get overlooked, who get told they don't belong, who get used and discarded by people in power." "What kind of something?" Maggie smiled. "I don't know yet, but I know I can't do it alone." She met Elena's eyes. "Will you help me?" Elena didn't hesitate. "Always." Outside, the sun was rising over Washington. A new day, a new beginning, and two women who had survived the darkness ready to step into the light. 6 months changed everything. Maggie stood in front of the converted warehouse that would become the headquarters of Project Phoenix. The building was nothing special. Brick walls, industrial windows, the kind of place nobody would look at twice. Perfect. "You really think this will work?" Elena asked, standing beside her. "I think it has to work. Too many soldiers get thrown away because they don't fit the mold. Too many good people get told they're not enough. And you're going to fix that. We're going to fix that. Together." The Pentagon had quietly approved the program 3 weeks earlier. Unofficial funding, no public record. A training facility for soldiers who had been written off by the system. Too old, too injured, too female, too different. The ones nobody believed in. Maggie believed in them. "First class arrives tomorrow," Elena said. 12 candidates. All of them failed out of other programs. All of them told they were done. Then we'll show them they're just getting started." She walked toward the building. Her phone buzzed. A message from Director Hayes. "Urgent. Call me now." Maggie's instincts flared. "Something wrong?" Elena asked. "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." She dialed Hayes. He answered on the first ring. "Maggie, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Thomas Crane is dead." Maggie stopped walking. "When?" 3 hours ago. His body was found in a safe house in Costa Rica, single gunshot to the head. Suicide. That's what it's meant to look like, but the angle is wrong. Entry wound suggests someone else pulled the trigger. Who? We don't know yet, but whoever did it left a message, written in Crane's blood on the wall. Maggie's grip tightened on the phone. What did it say? 2 words. She's next. The silence stretched. They're coming for you, Maggie. Whoever finished what you started with the network, they're not done, and they want you to know it. Let them come. This isn't a game. These people killed Crane in a safe house protected by private security. They walked in, executed him, and walked out without triggering a single alarm. We're dealing with professionals. So am I. Maggie, I've spent my entire career being hunted by people who wanted me dead. This is nothing new. This is different. You have something to protect now. The program, the people you're training. Elena. Maggie looked at Elena, who was watching with growing concern. What do you want me to do? Samuel, run, hide, abandon everything I'm building because someone wrote a threat in blood. I want you to be careful. I want you to watch your back. And I want you to consider the possibility that destroying the network made you more enemies than you realized. Good. Let them line up. I'll deal with them one at a time. She ended the call. Elena stepped closer. What happened? Crane is dead. Someone murdered him. And apparently, I'm next on the list. Who? That's the question, isn't it? Maggie's mind was already racing. The network was destroyed. The major players were in prison. Crane had been the last loose end. So who was left? Who had the resources, the skill, and the motive to track down Crane in a protected safe house and execute him? And more importantly, why leave a message for her? We need to increase security, Elena said. Postpone the program until... No. Maggie, someone just killed one of the most protected men in the country and promised to come for you next. This isn't the time to... This is exactly the time. Whoever did this wants me scared, wants me to run, wants me to abandon everything I'm building. Maggie's voice hardened. They don't know me very well. They know you well enough to find Crane. Finding Crane was easy. The hard part was getting to him. And they did that, which means they have resources, training, access. Former network, maybe. Or maybe something else entirely. She started walking toward the warehouse again. Get the security team on alert, triple the perimeter watches, and run a full background check on every candidate arriving tomorrow. You think one of them might be compromised. I think we can't afford to assume anything. Elena nodded and pulled out her phone, already making calls. Maggie stood alone for a moment, staring at the building that represented her future. Someone wanted her dead. That wasn't new. But this time, she had something worth living for, and she would fight to protect it. The first class of Project Phoenix arrived at 0600 the next morning. 12 soldiers, different ages, different backgrounds, different reasons for being here, but they all had one thing in common. They had been told they were finished. Maggie watched them file into the training room. Some walked with visible injuries. Others carried invisible ones. All of them wore the same expression, the mixture of hope and fear that came from being given one last chance. She recognized that expression. She had worn it herself once. Good morning, she said, stepping forward. My name is Margaret Callahan. You can call me Maggie. This is Captain Elena Vasquez. She'll be working with me to train you. 12 pairs of eyes fixed on her, measuring, assessing. I know what you've been told, Maggie continued. That you're damaged, that you're past your prime, that you don't belong in military service anymore. She let the words hang. I'm here to tell you that everything you've been told is wrong. A hand went up. A woman in her late 40s with graying hair and a scar that ran from her left eyebrow to her jaw. Ma'am, Sergeant Rachel Torres, permission to speak. Go ahead. With respect, ma'am, I've heard this speech before, at 2 other programs. Both times they washed me out within a month. How is this different? Maggie studied her, the scar, the defiant set of her jaw, the way she held herself despite the obvious pain in her left leg. What happened to you, Sergeant? IED in Afghanistan shattered my femur. Doctors said I'd never walk right again. I proved them wrong. Then I tried to return to active duty. 3 different commands told me I was unfit. And you kept trying. What else was I supposed to do? This is all I know. All I've ever been good at. Maggie nodded slowly. You want to know how this is different? It's different because I don't measure you against what you used to be. I measure you against what you can become. It's different because the standards here aren't about fitting a mold, they're about finding your strengths and building on them. It's different because I know what it feels like to be written off. She pulled up her sleeve, revealed a scar that ran from her wrist to her elbow. Mountain Facility, 1997. Mission that doesn't exist. I took shrapnel that nearly cost me my arm. The doctors said I was finished. My commanding officers agreed. She let them look. I'm 54 years old. I've been shot, stabbed, blown up, and left for dead more times than I can count. Every time someone told me I was done. She dropped her sleeve. I'm still here, and so are you. That means something. Rachel Torres stared at her with something new in her eyes, something that looked like recognition. So, no more speeches, Maggie said. Starting now, we work, and I promise you every single person in this room has more potential than they've ever been allowed to show. My job is to help you find it. She turned to Elena. Captain, let's begin. 3 weeks into the program, Rachel Torres became a problem. Not because she was failing, because she was pushing too hard. Maggie found her in the training room at 0300 running drills on a damaged leg that should have been resting. Torres, Rachel didn't stop. Ma'am, it's 3 in the morning. I'm aware. Your physical therapy schedule says you should be resting. My physical therapy schedule can go to hell. Maggie stepped onto the training floor. Stop. Rachel kept moving. Sergeant, that's an order. Rachel stopped. Her face was slick with sweat. Her injured leg was trembling. What are you trying to prove? Maggie asked. I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to get better. By destroying your leg, by ignoring medical advice, by pushing until you collapse. By doing whatever it takes. Rachel's voice cracked. I don't have time to rest. I don't have time to heal properly. Every day I'm not at full capacity is a day I'm falling behind. Behind who? Everyone. The younger soldiers, the ones who aren't broken, the ones who don't have to fight just to walk across a room. Maggie was quiet for a moment. Sit down. Ma'am? Sit down. Rachel sat. Her leg gave out beneath her and she landed harder than she intended. Pride kept her from crying out, but Maggie saw the flash of pain across her face. Maggie sat beside her. Let me tell you a story. I don't need stories. I need to train. You need to listen. Rachel fell silent. After my husband died, Maggie said slowly, I threw myself into work, missions, training, anything to avoid feeling what I was feeling. I pushed so hard that I nearly broke myself. 3 times I collapsed in the field. Twice I almost got teammates killed because I was too exhausted to function. She looked at Rachel. I thought I was being strong. I thought I was honoring his memory by never stopping, never resting, never allowing myself to be weak. You know what I was actually doing? What? Running from the grief, from the guilt, from the fear that if I stopped moving I would fall apart and never be able to put myself back together. Rachel's jaw tightened. You don't know what I'm running from. Don't I? Silence. I know you lost your team in that IED attack, Maggie said quietly. 4 soldiers. All of them died. You were the only survivor. Rachel's eyes went wet. How did you... I read your file, but more than that, I recognized the look in your eyes, the look that says, you're not pushing yourself to get better. You're pushing yourself to punish yourself for surviving. I should have died with them. Maybe, but you didn't. And that's not your fault. Isn't it I was the squad leader? I was supposed to protect them. You can't protect people from IEDs, Rachel. You can't predict where they're buried or when they'll go off. You can do everything right and still lose people. That's the nature of war. Then what's the point? What's the point of training, of getting better, of any of this, if the people I'm supposed to protect can just die anyway? Maggie reached out, took Rachel's hand. The point is that you're still here. The point is that you survived for a reason. The point is that every soldier you train, every life you influence, every person you help find their strength, that's how you honor the people you lost, not by destroying yourself, by building something that matters. Rachel stared at her. How do you do it? She whispered. How do you keep going after everything you've lost? One day at a time, one breath at a time, one moment at a time. Maggie squeezed her hand. And by surrounding myself with people who remind me why I'm still fighting. Rachel's tears finally fell. I don't know how to stop. I know. That's what I'm here for. To teach you that stopping isn't weakness, that rest isn't failure, that healing isn't giving up. She helped Rachel to her feet. Come on, I'll walk you to your quarters. Ma'am? Yes. Thank you. Maggie smiled. That's what soldiers do, Rachel. We lift each other up. The attack came at Yo 4:17 on a Tuesday. Maggie was awake instantly. Years of training pulled her from sleep to full combat readiness in less than 2 seconds. Gunfire. Outside. Multiple weapons. She grabbed her sidearm and moved. The hallway was chaos. Candidates running for cover, Elena shouting orders, the sound of glass shattering somewhere below. Report! Maggie called out. Perimeter breach. Elena appeared beside her, weapon drawn. Unknown number of hostiles, they're hitting the west entrance. The candidates. Secure room, Rachel is organizing them. Good. At least that was something. How did they get through? I don't know. Our security systems are down, all of them. Cameras, alarms, everything. Someone killed the entire network. Inside job. It had to be. Get to the secure room. Protect the candidates. I'll handle the hostiles. Maggie. That's an order, Captain. Elena hesitated for only a moment. Don't die. Not planning on it. She moved toward the sound of gunfire. The west entrance was a mess. 2 of her security team were down. Dead or unconscious, she couldn't tell. 3 more were pinned behind cover, returning fire against an enemy she couldn't yet see. How many? She called out. 6, maybe 8. One of the guards shouted back. They're pros, coordinated, military training. Of course they were. Maggie assessed the situation. The hostiles had taken position outside the main door. They were using suppressing fire to keep her people pinned while someone else there was always someone else moved around to flank. She could wait for them to make their move, or she could make hers first. She chose the second option. Moving low and fast, she circled around through the maintenance corridor, came up behind the main hostile position. 4 men in tactical gear focused entirely on the firefight in front of them. They never heard her coming. The first one went down with a broken neck. The second took a bullet before he could turn. The third managed to raise his weapon, but Maggie was faster. The fourth ran. She let him go. For now. The remaining hostiles at the door realized their flanking team was gone. They started to retreat. Hold position, Maggie ordered her team. Don't pursue. She watched the attackers disappear into the darkness. 4 dead. At least 4 more escaped. And she still didn't know who had sent them. Dawn brought answers. One of the surviving hostiles had been captured trying to scale the perimeter fence. He was sitting in an interrogation room, hands bound, face bloody from an altercation with Rachel Torres, who had caught him trying to sneak past the secure room. Maggie sat across from him. You have 2 choices. Tell me who sent you, or I let Sergeant Torres finish what she started. The man spat blood. Go to hell. That's not one of the choices. You don't scare me. I've dealt with worse than a 50-year-old grandmother. Maggie smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Let me explain something to you. I've killed more men than you've met. I've survived things that would break your mind just to hear about. And right now, the only thing standing between you and a very painful death is my curiosity about who you work for. She leaned forward. So let's try again. Who sent you? The man's bravado flickered. I don't know names. Just codes. What codes? Operation Phoenix Fire. We were supposed to eliminate the program. Kill everyone inside. Leave no survivors. Why? Above my pay grade, I just follow orders. Who gives the orders? A voice on a phone. Encrypted. Untraceable. Maggie studied him. You're lying. I'm not. You're lying because you're more afraid of whoever sent you than you are of me. That's understandable, but let me tell you something about fear. She stood, circled behind him. Fear only works when you believe there's a way out. When you think that if you stay loyal, if you keep your mouth shut, someone will come to save you. She leaned close to his ear. No one is coming. Your team is dead or scattered. Your mission failed. And the people who sent you, they've already written you off. You're a liability now, a loose end. And we both know what happens to loose ends. She felt him trembling. So here's your real choice. Tell me what you know and I'll protect you. I'll put you somewhere safe where they can't find you. Or stay silent and I'll hand you over to federal custody, where you'll be transferred to a facility that your employers definitely have people inside. How long do you think you'll last? Silence. Then quietly, there's a woman. What woman? She runs the operation. I've never seen her face, but I've heard her voice. Cold. Controlled. Like she's already calculated every possible outcome before she speaks. Does she have a name? They call her the Architect. She was part of Crane's inner circle. When the network fell, she disappeared. But she didn't stop. She just went deeper underground. The architect. Maggie's blood ran cold. What does she want? She wants revenge. Against you. Against everyone who destroyed what she built. She's been rebuilding the network piece by piece, recruiting people like me, planning something big. How big? I don't know, but I heard her say once that when it's finished, Margaret Callahan will wish she'd died with her husband. Maggie straightened. Where is she? I don't know. Nobody knows. That's the point. She's a ghost. Then how do you receive orders? Dead drops, anonymous servers, everything compartmentalized. Even if you take out half her operation, the other half doesn't know they exist. Professional. Thorough. The work of someone who had learned from the network's mistakes. You've told me everything you know. Everything, I swear. Maggie believed him. He was too scared to lie. Elena. The door opened. Elena stepped inside. Take him to federal custody and tell Hayes we have a new target. Who? Maggie's jaw tightened. The architect. Whoever she is, she just declared war, and I'm going to finish it. The weeks that followed were a race against an invisible enemy. Maggie worked her contacts, called in favors, traced every thread she could find. The architect remained a ghost. No photographs, no confirmed locations, no real name, just whispers and shadows. But the attacks kept coming. A car bomb outside Elena's apartment. She escaped with seconds to spare. A sniper attempt on Rachel during a training exercise. The bullet missed by inches. Poison in the water supply at headquarters. Caught only because one of the candidates had chemical detection training. The architect wasn't just trying to kill Maggie. She was trying to destroy everything Maggie had built. Everyone Maggie cared about. And she was getting closer every time. We need to go on the offensive, Elena said during a late-night strategy session. We can't keep playing defense forever. We can't attack what we can't find. Then we make her come to us. Maggie looked at her. What are you suggesting? A trap. Something she can't resist. Something that forces her out of hiding. She's too smart for obvious bait. Then we make it not obvious. Elena pulled out a folder. I've been analyzing her patterns. Every attack has been aimed at destroying your legacy. The program, the people. Everything you've built since Crane died. Your point. My point is that she's not just trying to kill you. She's trying to erase you. To prove that everything you accomplished was meaningless. That the network's destruction was temporary, and she can rebuild it better than before. Maggie considered this. So we give her the chance to prove it. Exactly. We announce that Project Phoenix is expanding. A big public event. Press coverage. Government officials. The whole world watching. And we let her try to hit it. We let her think she can hit it, while we're actually waiting for her. Ready. It was risky, dangerous, but it might be the only way to end this. If we're wrong, Maggie said slowly, a lot of innocent people could die. If we're right, we stop her before she kills everyone you care about. Maggie stared at the folder. Michael's dog tags felt heavy against her chest. Do it. Set it up, and make sure the architect knows exactly where and when it's happening. Elena nodded. One more thing. What? If this goes wrong if I don't make it, I want you to know that everything you taught me, everything you showed me about what real strength looks like, it mattered. It changed me. Maggie reached across the table, took Elena's hand. You're going to make it. We both are. And when this is over, we're going to build something that the architect and everyone like her can never destroy. Promise. Promise. They sat in silence for a moment. Two warriors preparing for a battle that would decide everything. Tomorrow, the trap would be set, and the hunt for the architect would finally begin. The day of the ceremony arrived under a sky heavy with clouds. 300 guests filled the courtyard of the Project Phoenix headquarters. Senators, military officials, journalists from every major network, the kind of crowd that made perfect targets. And somewhere out there, the architect was watching. Maggie stood backstage, adjusting the collar of her dress uniform. It felt strange wearing it again after so many years. The medals, the ribbons, the weight of a career that officially didn't exist. You look like you're about to face a firing squad, Elena said, appearing beside her. I might be. Security is in position. Every rooftop covered. Every entrance monitored. If she makes a move, we'll see it. Will we? She's been 3 steps ahead of us since this started. Elena's jaw tightened. Then we'll have to be 4 steps ahead. Maggie looked at her. This woman who had been a scared lieutenant just 18 months ago, who had grown into something remarkable, something dangerous. Whatever happens today, I want you to know something. Don't give me a goodbye speech. You're going to walk out there, give your speech, and we're going to catch the architect. That's the plan. Plans don't always work. Yours do. Maggie almost smiled. When did you become the optimist? When you taught me that hope isn't weakness. Elena squeezed her shoulder. Now get out there. Show them who you are. Maggie took a breath. Then she walked toward the stage. The crowd fell silent as she approached the podium. 300 faces watching, cameras rolling, the world waiting to hear what Margaret Callahan had to say. She gripped the podium and began. 18 months ago, I stood in a room full of people who had been told they were finished. Too old. Too damaged. Too different. The military had written them off. Society had forgotten them. They had almost forgotten themselves. She paused. Today, those same people are some of the finest soldiers I've ever worked with. Not because they changed who they were, because they finally discovered who they had always been. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Project Phoenix isn't just a training program. It's a promise. A promise that potential doesn't have an expiration date. That strength doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from standing up. That the people everyone overlooks are often the ones who change everything. Movement in her peripheral vision. Elena's voice in her earpiece. Maggie, we have activity. East perimeter. She didn't break stride. I've spent my life being underestimated. I've been told I was too small, too female, too old. Every time I proved them wrong, not because I was better than everyone else, because I refused to accept their limitations. Multiple contacts approaching, armed. And that's what I see in every soldier who walks through our doors. Not weakness, not failure, potential waiting to be unleashed. They're moving fast, converging on your position. Maggie looked out at the crowd. 300 people, civilians, officials, innocent lives. Today, I'm proud to announce the expansion of Project Phoenix. We're opening 3 new training facilities across the country. We're doubling our capacity. We're going to reach every soldier who's been written off and show them what they're really capable of. Maggie, you need to move, now. Because that's what we do. We lift each other up. We refuse to leave anyone behind. And we prove every single day that real power isn't about winning. The first explosion rocked the east gate. Screams erupted from the crowd. People dove for cover. Security teams scrambled. Maggie didn't move. It's about helping others rise. The second explosion hit the west entrance. Maggie, Elena's voice was frantic. Get off the stage. Instead, Maggie pulled a weapon from beneath the podium. Everyone stay calm and move toward the main building. Security will guide you. A third explosion, closer this time. And then she saw her, moving through the chaos like a specter. A woman in her 60s, silver-haired, elegant, walking calmly while everyone else ran. Their eyes met across the courtyard. The architect smiled, and Maggie understood. This wasn't a terrorist attack. It was an invitation. She moved through this panicked crowd, weapon raised, tracking the architect's path. Elena's voice crackled in her ear. I've lost visual. Where is she? Heading for the north corridor. She wants me to follow. Then don't follow. It's obviously a trap. Everything has been a trap. At least this time I know where it leads. Maggie, get the civilians to safety. Protect Rachel and the candidates. I'll handle this. You can't face her alone. I've been alone my whole career, Elena. This is how it has to end. She pulled out her earpiece and dropped it. The north corridor was empty, silent. The sounds of chaos faded behind her as she moved deeper into the building. The architect was waiting. She stood at the end of the hallway, hands clasped in front of her, perfectly composed. Margaret, finally, we meet properly. Who are you? Names don't matter anymore. What matters is what we are, what we've always been. And what's that? Two sides of the same coin, both created by the same system. Both weapons pointed at problems. The only difference is that I accepted what I am, and you keep pretending you're something else. Maggie raised her weapon. I'm nothing like you. No. You've killed more people than I have. You've operated outside the law for decades. You've done things that would horrify the people out there cheering for you. I did it for the right reasons. So did I. That's what everyone tells themselves. The architect stepped closer. I believed in the network, Margaret. I believed we were protecting America, preserving our power, ensuring our survival in a world that wanted to see us fall. You sold weapons to terrorists. I sold weapons to the highest bidder. Sometimes that was terrorists. Sometimes it was governments we claimed were our enemies, but secretly needed our help. It's all the same game. Power, control, the illusion of morality wrapped around naked self-interest. You killed my husband. The architect's expression didn't change. I ordered many deaths. Your husband was one of them. He was getting too close. He had to be eliminated. And now you're going to pay for it. Am I? She tilted her head. Look around, Margaret. This building is surrounded. My people have your friends, your precious candidates, everyone you've worked so hard to protect. Maggie's grip tightened. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your communications. Oh wait, you threw away your earpiece. Very dramatic, very foolish. If you had them, you'd have used them by now. Would I? Or would I wait until this moment when you're standing in front of me, completely alone, to let you know that everything you've built is about to be destroyed? A door opened behind Maggie. She spun. Elena was shoved through, hands bound, a gun pressed to her head by a man in tactical gear. Don't, the man warned. Drop your weapon, or she dies. Maggie's blood turned to ice. Elena, I'm sorry. Elena's voice was tight with pain. They were waiting. They knew exactly where we'd go. The architect laughed softly. Did you really think I didn't know about your trap, Margaret? I've been planning this for 6 months. Every move you made, I anticipated. Every contingency you prepared, I countered. You're not dealing with Crane or Moore. You're dealing with someone who actually knows how to think. Let her go. This is between us. No, it's not. This is about legacy. This is about proving that everything you've accomplished is meaningless. That the network wasn't destroyed, it evolved, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Maggie looked at Elena, at the fear in her eyes, at the woman who had become like a daughter to her. What do you want? I want you to watch. I want you to see everyone you love die one by one, knowing that you could have prevented it if you just stayed hidden, if you just accepted that some fights can't be won. And then I'll kill you, but not quickly, slowly, the way your husband died, bleeding out in the dirt, watching everything he fought for crumble to ash. Maggie's hand trembled. You won't get away with this. I already have. Look around. You're alone. Your army is scattered. Your program is in ruins, and the woman you think of as your daughter is about to die in front of you. She nodded to the man holding Elena. Do it. The man's finger tightened on the trigger, and then Rachel Torres crashed through the window. Everything happened in the space of 3 heartbeats. Rachel hit the gunman with the full force of her momentum, driving him away from Elena. The weapon discharged, but the bullet went wide. Elena dropped, rolling clear, using the moment to break her bonds on a piece of broken glass. Maggie moved, not toward the architect, toward the second gunman, emerging from the shadows behind her. She caught his arm, redirected the weapon, broke his wrist with a technique that hadn't been taught in any official training program. The architect pulled a weapon of her own. Enough. Everyone froze. She had the gun pressed to Rachel's head. The woman who had been her salvation a moment ago was now on her knees, the architect behind her, One more move, and she dies. Maggie stopped. Elena stopped. Let her go. No, I don't think I will. The architect's voice was ice. You know what I find fascinating, Margaret? You surround yourself with broken people, damaged people, the ones everyone else has given up on. They're not broken. They're mirrors. They remind you of yourself, of the scared little girl who had to prove she was worth something because nobody believed in her. You don't know anything about me. I know everything about you. I've studied you for years. Your psychology, your weaknesses, your desperate need to save people because you couldn't save the one person who mattered. Her grip on Rachel tightened. Michael didn't die because of strategy. He died because you weren't good enough. Because all your training, all your skills, all your precious potential, none of it was enough to keep him alive. Maggie's composure cracked. Shut up. You failed him, and you've been trying to make up for it ever since. Building programs, saving soldiers, creating a legacy that will finally prove you were worth something. I said shut up, but it doesn't matter. None of it matters. Because no matter how many people you save, no matter how many lives you change, you will always be the woman who let her husband die. Something broke inside Maggie, not her spirit, not her will, her restraint. You want to know the truth? Maggie's voice was deadly quiet. You're right. I couldn't save Michael. I've lived with that guilt every day for 6 years. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing I think about before I sleep. She stepped forward. But here's what you don't understand. That guilt doesn't make me weak. It makes me dangerous. Because I know what it costs to lose someone. And I will never, ever let it happen again. One more step and Maggie moved. Not away from Rachel. Toward her. She grabbed the architect's gun hand, twisted, redirected the barrel away from Rachel's head. The weapon fired, but the bullet hit nothing. Rachel dropped flat. Elena tackled the architect from behind. And Maggie did what she had been trained to do since she was 22 years old. 3 seconds. That's all it took. When it was over, the architect was on the ground, her own weapon pressed to her temple, Maggie's knee on her chest. It's over. The architect laughed, a broken, bitter sound. You think this ends with me? The network is bigger than one person, bigger than Crane, bigger than you can imagine. Maybe, but you won't be there to see it. Then kill me. Do what you've wanted to do since you found out who I was. Maggie's finger touched the trigger. Everything she had lost, everything she had suffered, everything she had sacrificed for this moment. One bullet, one squeeze, and it would all be over. Do it, the architect hissed. Prove that you're exactly what I said you were. A weapon, a killer, no different from me. Maggie looked at her, at this woman who had taken everything from her, who had destroyed her life, who had tried to destroy everyone she loved, and she lowered the weapon. No. What? I'm not going to kill you, not because you deserve mercy, but because I'm not going to become what you want me to be. She stood. You were right about one thing. Michael's death changed me, but it didn't make me a killer. It made me someone who understands what loss feels like. Someone who will spend the rest of her life making sure no one else has to feel what I felt. Elena moved to Maggie's side. Rachel struggled to her feet. You'll spend the rest of your life in prison, Maggie continued, watching the network you built crumble, watching the people you hurt rebuild, watching everything you tried to destroy grow stronger because you tried to destroy it. The architect's face twisted with rage. This isn't over. Yes. It is. Sirens in the distance, backup arriving, the chaos outside finally being controlled. Maggie turned away. Elena, Rachel, let's go. They walked toward the door. Behind them, the architect screamed, cursed, threatened. None of them looked back. The sun was setting when Maggie finally allowed herself to breathe. She stood on the roof of the Project Phoenix building, watching the sky turn orange and gold. Below, the cleanup continued. Casualties had been minimal. The attack had been contained. They had won. Elena found her there. You should be celebrating. I will. Eventually. Elena stood beside her. Why didn't you kill her? After everything she did? Maggie was quiet for a long moment. Because that's not who I want to be. It's not who Michael would have wanted me to be. She pulled the dog tags from under her shirt, held them in her palm. He always said that the measure of a soldier isn't how many enemies they destroy. It's how many lives they protect, how many people they help, how much good they leave behind. He sounds like a wise man. He was the best I ever knew. Elena touched her arm. He'd be proud of you. What you built, what you did today, all of it. Maggie's eyes were wet. I hope so. I really hope so. They stood in silence watching the sunset. What happens now? Elena asked. Now we rebuild. Again. Better than before. We take what happened today and we learn from it. We make Project Phoenix stronger. We help more people. And the network. The network will keep existing in some form. There will always be people who sell weapons to enemies, who profit from war, who put money above lives. And you'll keep fighting them. We'll keep fighting them. Together. For as long as it takes. Elena smiled. When I met you, I thought you were the strongest person I'd ever seen. Now I realize I was wrong. Wrong. You're not just strong, Maggie. You're something else. Something I don't have a word for. Maggie looked at her. Human. That's the word you're looking for. Just human. Broken and healed and broken again. Still standing. Still fighting. Still hoping. Is that enough? It has to be. It's all any of us have. 1 year later, Margaret Callahan stood at the entrance of the new Project Phoenix training facility in Colorado, the third one to open this year, the largest so far. 50 candidates waited inside, soldiers from every branch, every background, every story of being written off and left behind. Rachel Torres stood beside her, a captain's bars on her collar now. You ready for this? Rachel asked. I've been ready for this my whole life. They walked inside. The candidates stood at attention. 50 faces, 50 stories, 50 people who had been told they were finished. Maggie looked at each one of them. My name is Margaret Callahan. Some of you know my story. Some of you don't. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here. You chose to be here. And that choice means something. She paced slowly in front of them. You've been told you're too old, too damaged, too different. You've been told that your best days are behind you, that you should accept your limitations, that you should be grateful for whatever scraps the system throws you. She stopped. I'm here to tell you that everything you've been told is a lie. A murmur rippled through the ranks. The people who told you those things were measuring you against a standard they created, a standard designed to keep power in the hands of the people who already have it, a standard that has nothing to do with what you're actually capable of. She looked at Rachel, at Elena, who had arrived that morning to help with the opening ceremony, at every face that represented a victory over doubt and fear and cruelty. Real strength isn't about fitting in. It's about standing up. Real power isn't about winning. It's about lifting others up. Real potential doesn't have an expiration date. It's waiting inside every single one of you right now, ready to be unleashed. She stepped forward. I'm not going to promise this will be easy. It won't be. You're going to be pushed harder than you've ever been pushed. You're going to face tests that seem impossible. You're going to want to quit many times. Her voice hardened. But you're not going to quit. Because you're not the people they said you were. You're not failures. You're not broken. You're not finished. She met each pair of eyes in the room. You're soldiers. My soldiers. And by the time I'm done with you, you're going to be the finest operators this country has ever seen. Not despite what you've been through. Because of it. Silence. Then Rachel began to clap. Elena joined her. The other staff joined. And then the candidates joined. A sound that started as applause and became something else. Something that sounded like hope. Like belief. Like the beginning of something that would change lives. Maggie stood in the center of it, feeling the weight of Michael's dog tags against her heart. I'll see you on the other side, Mags. She could almost hear his voice. I see you, baby, she whispered. I finally see you. That night, Maggie sat alone in her office writing in a journal she had kept since Michael's death. The words came slowly at first, then faster. Today I opened the third facility. 50 new candidates. 50 new chances to make a difference. Every face reminded me why I'm still doing this. She paused. The architect is in prison. The network is fractured. The people who killed Michael are finally facing justice. It should feel like victory. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it just feels like exhaustion. She looked at the photograph on her desk. Michael's smiling arms around her, taken 2 weeks before the mission that killed him. I think about you every day. I wonder if you'd approve of what I've become. If you'd be proud of the choices I've made. If you'd still love the woman I've had to turn into. Her eyes burned. I didn't become who you expected. I became someone harder, colder, more dangerous than either of us imagined. But I also became someone who helps people, who lifts them up, who refuses to let the darkness win. She touched the photograph. That's your legacy, Michael. Not the missions we ran or the enemies we killed, the people we saved, the lives we changed, the soldiers who will go on to save others because someone believed in them when no one else would. She closed the journal. Outside her window, the stars were coming out. The same stars she used to watch with Michael on the nights before missions. The same stars she had wished on when she was a young girl dreaming of being something more than what the world expected. I kept my promise, she said to the darkness. I kept fighting. I kept hoping. I kept believing that the world could be better if we just refused to give up on it. She stood, walked to the window. And I'll keep going, for you, for Elena, for Rachel, for every soldier who's ever been told they don't belong, for every person who's ever been written off and left behind. The tears came finally, silent, healing. I love you, Michael. I'll always love you. And when my time comes, I'll see you on the other side. I promise. She wiped her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new enemies, new chances to make a difference. But tonight she would rest. Tonight she would remember. Tonight she would be grateful for everything she had built and everyone she had saved and every single moment that had led her to this place. Margaret Callahan was 55 years old, a grandmother, a warrior, a legend that would never appear in any official record. But her legacy would live on, in every soldier she trained, in every life she changed, in every person who learned that true power never needs to prove itself. It simply stands, and others rise. The next morning, a new group of candidates arrived at Project Phoenix. Among them was a young woman with haunted eyes and trembling hands. She had been told she was too damaged for service, too broken to be useful, too lost to find her way back. She approached the front desk nervously. I'm looking for Margaret Callahan. Rachel Torres looked up. She's expecting you. Down the hall, last door on the left. The woman walked down the corridor, her heart pounding. She didn't know what to expect. Didn't know if she was ready for whatever came next. She knocked on the door. Come in. She entered. Maggie sat behind a simple desk, silver hair pulled back, eyes that held depth beyond words. You must be Sarah. I've been reading your file. Ma'am, I should tell you up front the things in that file. I'm not sure I can... Sit down, Sarah. She sat. Maggie studied her for a long moment. You've been through hell. I can see it in your eyes. The question is, are you ready to come back from it? I don't know. I don't know if I'm strong enough. Maggie leaned forward. Let me tell you something. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about getting back up after you do. It's about finding the courage to try again when everything inside you says to give up. She reached across the desk, took Sarah's trembling hands. I've been where you are, broken, lost, convinced that I had nothing left to give, but I found my way back, and so will you. How do you know? Maggie smiled. Because you're here. because you didn't give up, because something inside you refused to accept that this is how your story ends. She squeezed Sarah's hands. That something is your strength, your real strength, the kind that can't be measured by tests or standards or anyone else's expectations. And if you let me, I'll help you find it. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Why? Why would you help someone like me? Maggie's answer was simple. Because that's what soldiers do. We lift each other up. We refuse to leave anyone behind. And we prove every single day that the world doesn't get to decide who we are. She stood, extended her hand. Welcome to Project Phoenix, Sarah. Your new life starts now. Sarah took her hand. And somewhere in a place beyond sight, beyond time, beyond everything that separates the living from the dead, Michael Callahan smiled. His wife had kept her promise. She had risen, and she was helping others rise with her. That was her legacy. That was her truth. That was who Margaret Callahan had always been meant to become. Not just a soldier, not just a warrior, a light in the darkness, a voice for the voiceless, a proof that true power isn't about strength or speed or tactical superiority. True power is about love, about hope, about the stubborn, unshakable belief that no matter how dark the night becomes, the sun will always rise again. And it did. Every single day. Because Margaret Callahan made sure of it.